Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we'll begin. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ajma'in. Um, so, I think we've been doing this brief. You've been all doing brief 15-minute talks, and I'm gonna probably do my best to make it 15 minutes. Might be 10 minutes, but make it 15 minutes, inshallah. I'm not feeling well, but inshallah, I'll make dua for your brother, inshallah. Last week, we actually, 2 weeks ago in Las Vegas in Massachusetts, we did a khutbah, uncovered the topic on that the law will not change the condition of a people until we change within themselves. And amazing that it took about 2 weeks because we related to actually what's changing within yourselves is actually purifying yourselves. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that every individual, every worshiper, he is a vendor of his own soul in the beginning of the day, and he will either purify that soul or he will either corrupt it. So this is and so then we linked it to the ayat where Allah says he won't change the condition of a person until he changes what is within themselves. And so we thought about, and we talked about patterns and behaviors. I read somewhere where in the book called the Lost Art of Listening, they said that when the individual tries to change his pattern, that the brain sees it as a stressful event. So it means that it's very something arduous to do. Excuse me. Changing the pattern is something that's very arduous. So much so that it affects the brain, and the brain said, "What are we doing? What's going on?" And that makes it harder. And then we thought about, we related to, just think about some of the patterns that we have been, some of us that are 40, like myself, I'll be 49 Monday, alhamdulillah, inshallah, how long some of those patterns have been with us. And then also how these patterns have got ingrained into us. You see, we have some patterns that have been ingrained into us, and the therapists, they say from DNA, from the genes, from education, the way we were brought up, and from environment. So when you have a pattern that was negative, like we see in some of our communities, we grow up in these environments. We grow up in these environments, and we grow up in sometime in dysfunctional homes, dysfunctional environments, and may have been conceived with parents with dysfunctional DNA, for lack of a better expression, right? So we have these ingrained patterns that only the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to help us. Only the aid of Allah is going to help the individual break some of these patterns. And we also talked about the Milati Islam. This it's established. We have a program here, very consistent brothers. They even talked about how sometimes the drug addiction patterns are so tough and arduous to break that only the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to help. We're going to need it. That only that kind of help is going to help break those patterns. And so, but then that's when we came into the ayat related that Allah won't change your pattern. He won't change your conditions until you change within yourself. So you have to, first do some work on ourselves. And essentially it's purifying ourselves. One of the things that stuck out and just want to share briefly real quick is what, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, when he talked about the composition of man. And he said the composition of man is of 5 parts. He said he is 1, aql, cognition. He says 2, he is nafs, right? And I believe it's the word, and maybe it's has, maybe wrong, but it's we're our nefs, which means we're our behavioral inclinations. Then he says that man is also made up of ihsas, which is our emotions. And then he says man is made up of a ruh, which is the spirit, and then the qalb. But he says when you look at when you look at the the stages, you know, we're affected first with the thoughts, right? We know the thoughts goes into emotions and actions and feelings. So, but when we're talking about ourselves, when we're talking about changing our patterns, sometimes we have to change the behaviors. We talk about change the environments. We have to change. We have to change company, right? Sometimes we have to change company. It's in the Quran where Allah says on the day of judgment, some of us are going to say, um, "Wayla tani, woe to me that I took Fulan as a Khalilin. Woe to me that I took such and such as a close companion, a Khalilin, a close companion. For indeed he has guided me off the path, off the remembrance of Allah." So sometimes we have to change those environments. Sometimes we live in dysfunctional environments where the remembrance of Allah is not going on. It may be kind of tough because some of the inhabitants in the environment uh, uh, may not be on the same path. That needs to be purified. So, but these things affects first the thoughts. See, it affects the thoughts. So he broke down what I want to share real quick, inshallah, is that he said this the cognitions, and he said that it has uh, the thinking, the thoughts. They have 5 stages. Okay, so this is why, and we want to before we get into this, think about the before we go into these five, think about the ayat where Allah says, وَأَمَّا يَنزَغَنَّكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزْغٌ فَاسْتَئِذْ بِاللَّهِ فَإِنَّهُ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. And when the shaitan, nazaga, when he assaults your mind and he assaults you, and Allah calls him nazagun, and it's amazing, just a real sidestep. Uh, in these 2 ayats we're going to share, Allah gives shaitan also characteristics. And here he calls him nazgun, the one who incites, attack your mind and attack it with evil. See? Boom. The one who assaults your mind and he assaults it, and you think, where did this thought come from? What's going on? What am I thinking about? That's nazgun. That's the shaitan nazgun. But then Allah used the word fasta'ith billahi, which means quickly turn to remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For that is just as quickly he comes and assaults the thoughts, quickly combat it with we combat it with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So keep that in mind when we ready to share these 5 thoughts of these 5 stages of thoughts. And it's also amazing that I believe the same ayat Allah also says, and وَإِذَا مَسَّهُمْ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ طَائِفٌ, another attribute, another name that is given, ta'ifun. And when you masaha, when you are touched, mina shaitan ta'ifun, the one that makes tawaf around you. So he's making tawaf around you, trying to fight you and insult you, and all this is going on. But the only thing that's going to work is remembrance of Allah. And what like he said, he wants to assault your thoughts. So Ibn al-Qayyim said that, I'm sorry, not Ibn al-Qayyim, Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah. He says that the thoughts go through 5 stages. He says the first is the hajjus, and he said this is fleeting thoughts. You know, the brain's always thinking. And then if you got fleeting thoughts, imagine if you're in environments and you're around people who will affect those fleeting thoughts. Okay, with shaitan. So you have fleeting thoughts. He said then the second stage it goes into is called khatir. This is Now we start to entertain the thought. Now the thought is starting to be entertained. So it's starting to brew a little bit, right? And then he says the third stage will be hadith and nafs. He said this is now is self-talk. Now, but yet no inclination. Now you're like, wow, you're entertaining the little evil thought. You know what I mean? Now you start to get into the danger zone. Right? He says, then the fourth one is called ham, and this is inclination towards the behavior. Now, now we're here with like, uh-oh, you didn't catch it. We didn't catch it with festa if billahi. We didn't catch it with uh, uh, um, seeking assistance from Allah, seeking refuge with Allah. We didn't catch it with the remembrance of Allah. Start thinking about Allah, right? Now we're inclining towards the behavior. And then he says, then it goes into azm. Then it goes into azm, which is now you have a firm resolve to engage in the behavior. Danger zone, right? And he notes that he said, Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, he said that the goal is to keep our thoughts at the first three levels. Because at those first three, you're not mukhalaf, it's just a fleeting thought, you know, self-talk. Remember I believe it's in the 40 hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ talked about if you think about doing a bad deed, but then you don't engage in it, then you will be rewarded a good deed. So these bad thoughts is going to come, you know. But it's when we get to ham, the fourth one, we start inclining the behavior, right? Have maybe plotting and planning. I remember there's one brother explained about a lot of times we hear sin. We had the word sin, and the noob maybe translated as sin, or ithmun maybe translated as sin. Yeah, um, we have um, Marcia Khabira and Marcia Salira. We have big sins and we have little sins. So he said, like the noob will be considered, when we say from one Jumu'ah to the next, the sins has been forgiven. Or when the brothers, two Muslims, they shake hands and the sins are being forgiven as they're uh, shaking hands. Well, these could be considered a noob, but there's some sins that have to be, we need to make really toba and firm resolve not to engage in them, not to engage in them. And so he says, the noob could maybe fall under small sins, but also he said that ithmun, this is sins that have been like plotted out, planned, premeditative sins. I mean, you look at the criminal system. Okay, you have crime, they witnesses. You say, oh, well, maybe it was a small little crime. But when they found out, oh, it was premeditated, you planned it. Oh no, no. And so the same with this. But he said, one scholar said, so if you engage in planned and premeditated sins, and you make this and it becomes your pattern, then he says now you go to jarama, you become like a mujram. Now, if you engage if this becomes your pattern, premeditated sins, planning and plotting them, full awareness of what you're doing, then you start to sever ties with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the same thing with the process of the thinking, same thing with the process of our thoughts. We want to catch them. You want to be in that stage where you can catch the thinking, you can catch it going into the danger zones, which is ham, inclination towards the behavior, planting and plotting to do behavior, and going and engaging in the behavior. But when it becomes our pattern, when it becomes the thinking pattern, uh, then we know that sometimes, and depending on how long it's been going on or how intense, uh, we're going to need the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's where Allah says He will not change the condition of us until we change within ourselves. You know, um, some came to mind um, in this process of purifying ourselves, in this process of changing our patterns, so Allah can help us to change them. One of the things that we shared we're going to need, and I'm gonna wrap it up, is that we're going to need the spiritual functioning of our eyes, our ears, and our hearts, and that's a whole nother talk. On Allah, we notice that those three faculties, those three body parts, Allah, there's a relationship with them. Allah says, he says that we gave you hearts, we gave you eyes that you didn't use them, you didn't see with them, and we gave you ears that you didn't listen with them, and we gave you hearts la taqilun, that you didn't think with them, right? You didn't use them. And then he also says in Surah Al-Baqarah that that he will seal up the hearing, and he would put a veil over the hearing and over the sight, and he would seal up the hearts. But the Prophet ﷺ, but he also made dua. He said, "Oh Allah, make put nur in my eyes, put nur in my ears, put nur in my heart." Right. So we want to make sure that we be in this process of changing our patterns. That we're going to need those faculties. We're going to need we're going to need the spiritual functioning of our eyes, the ears, and our hearts, because the malfunction of it would continue to keep us just uh, in the danger zone. And so, just to wrap it up, and to note that you know, Allah won't change the condition of our people until we change within themselves. Um, and we want to start each day with the resolve that we're going to purify ourselves and don't corrupt it. And we know that we got to watch with our environments. We got to watch the people around. We got to watch anything that affects our thoughts. We got to seek refuge in Allah from Shaitan, so he don't nuzzle us, uh, affect and assault us, and and may Allah help us uh, and myself. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.